I used to believe I was hopelessly romantic, someone who simply loved too deeply. But therapy has a way of tearing illusions apart, exposing truths we'd rather ignore. My therapist, with a calm and unwavering gaze, finally named what I had been avoiding for years: love addiction. At first, I resisted. Addicted to love? I thought. I just want to be in a relationship. But the more we spoke, the more I realized the subtle, insidious patterns that had shaped every romantic connection I had ever formed. It wasn't the feeling of love itself I craved. I wasn't addicted to intimacy, to companionship, or even to the idea of building a life with someone. No, it was something far more intoxicating, far more ephemeral: the rush of being in love. That heady first stage, where every message makes your heart leap, where every glance seems charged with electricity, where the world itself feels brighter because someone is thinking of you, the honeymoon phase. I had been chasing that feeling like a drug, time and time again, only to falter when reality arrived. And reality is relentless. It isn't always kind. Once the fantasy fades, the real work begins, the labor of love that no one talks about in fairy tales. Vulnerability becomes unavoidable. Conflicts emerge, not in the form of grand explosions, but as quiet tensions, misaligned expectations, and the subtle irritations that accumulate over weeks and months. The effort required to nurture a lasting relationship terrified me. And so, I retreated. I questioned everything. Was I ready to stay? Should I run? The comfort of flight felt safer than the risk of staying. This pattern became the blueprint of my romantic life. I would fall, intensely and passionately, for the fantasy of love, only to pull back when the warmth of that initial glow dimmed. And I wasn't alone. Many people, especially those in the spotlight, live similar cycles, masked by charm, confidence, and public adoration. Take Common, for instance. He is celebrated as one of Hollywood's most introspective, soulful men, award-winning, poetic, spiritually attuned. A man whose image radiates depth, empathy, and charisma. To the world, he seems the perfect partner. And yet, despite dating some of the most iconic women in entertainment, Serena Williams, Taraji P. Henson, Erykah Badu, Tiffany Haddish, Angela Rye, Ava DuVernay, and more recently, Jennifer Hudson, not a single relationship has lasted. Why? Because beneath the polished public persona lies the same pattern that defined my romantic missteps: a love addiction that thrives on the thrill of the chase but recoils from the ordinary, unglamorous work of real intimacy. Each of these relationships began with fire. Each woman was drawn into the intoxicating glow of early romance, where everything about Common seemed effortless, profound, and magical. And just as each began to settle into the routine of mutual growth, connection, and vulnerability, he pulled away. The same emotional walls I knew so well, the instinct to flee when love demanded labor, emerged again and again, the peculiar kind of tragedy, one made more visible because of fame. While most people hide the patterns of their love addiction behind closed doors, celebrities' lives unfold under microscopes, exposing every misstep. In Common's case, the cycle of initial adoration, subsequent detachment, and eventual heartbreak repeated publicly, leaving fans and observers bewildered. How could a man who seemed so spiritually attuned, emotionally intelligent, and deeply introspective fail to sustain a single long-term relationship? The answer, quietly admitted in interviews, lies in his own admission. He is addicted, not to love itself, but to the intoxicating high of early romance. This confession, though simple, illuminates everything. The butterflies, the thrill of new connection, the fantasy of the early days, these are his lifeline. Once that feeling fades, the real challenges of commitment, conflict, vulnerability, emotional labor, become unbearable. And in those moments, the pattern repeats: he retreats, emotionally distancing himself, sometimes without fully understanding why. Therapists often explain this behavior not as a moral failing, but as a psychological response to fear, unmet needs, and unprocessed pain. In Common's case, this fear manifests behind the veneer of perfection, the award-winning poetry, the public meditations, the Instagram posts radiating serenity. All of it masks an internal struggle with staying present once the honeymoon ends. For those of us watching from the outside, it's easy to interpret these patterns as betrayal, inconsistency, or a lack of love. But those trapped within the cycle understand a different truth. The addiction isn't about the other person, it's about the feeling itself, a feeling that inevitably fades, leaving an uncomfortable void. And so, the withdrawal begins. As this story unfolds, you'll see that the patterns of love addiction are not confined to one individual. They echo across relationships, celebrity culture, and even the lives of those who seem most composed. They remind us that love is rarely the simple, unending fairy tale it appears to be. And that understanding, painful as it may be, is the first step toward empathy, insight, and perhaps, eventual healing. To the public, Common has always seemed like the dream partner, effortlessly charming, intensely spiritual, and profoundly introspective. He exudes a calm confidence, a sense of grounded wisdom rarely seen in Hollywood. One might imagine him composing heartfelt poetry over breakfast, sipping herbal tea while discussing the nuances of healing, or meditating at sunrise to center his thoughts. To the outside world, he is the embodiment of emotional intelligence and stability. Yet, behind the polished image lies a more complicated, quieter truth, a recurring cycle of romantic disconnection. Common's love story is, in many ways, a study in contrasts, the dazzling public persona versus the private pattern of emotional retreat. Over the years, he has been linked to some of the most powerful and influential women in the entertainment industry: Serena Williams, the tennis superstar whose discipline and ambition match her unmatched talent, Taraji P. Henson, whose energy, wit, and vulnerability have captivated audiences worldwide, Erykah Badu, the soulful musician whose creativity knows no bounds, Tiffany Haddish, Angela Rye, Ava DuVernay, and Jennifer Hudson, each iconic in her own right. Each woman, in her own way, was drawn into the gravitational pull of Common's charisma, his depth, and the intoxicating glow of early romance, yet despite these high-profile pairings, not one of these relationships endured. And the question that inevitably arises is this: how can a man who seems so aware, so thoughtful, so capable of emotional depth, fail to sustain a single long-term connection? The answer is layered and complex, rooted in the very human struggle with love addiction. Common himself has spoken openly about this. He admits he is not addicted to intimacy, to sex, or even to companionship. He is addicted to the adrenaline of new love, the excitement and novelty of the honeymoon phase. That rush, the butterflies, the sense that every moment is magical, every gesture amplified, fuels his attachment. Once the spark dims, however, and the relationship enters the less glamorous stages of compromise, conflict, and vulnerability, his interest begins to fade. The pattern is almost mechanical: passion rises, the thrill peaks, the honeymoon phase passes, and then he withdraws. This cycle mirrors the experiences of countless individuals, yet in Common's case, the stakes are magnified by fame. In Hollywood, every gesture, every word, every subtle emotional shift is subject to public scrutiny. Relationships are not merely private affairs, they are narratives consumed, dissected, and judged by millions. The pressure amplifies the fear of imperfection, making it more difficult to remain present when the initial glow fades. The public sees the surface: awards ceremonies, magazine covers, Instagram posts that radiate perfection. They witness Common praising his partner, sharing affectionate glimpses into their life, and speaking with reverence and tenderness in interviews. For a time, it can appear as though he has finally found the one, someone who could anchor him beyond the transient thrill of new romance. But the private reality, hidden behind closed doors, tells a different story. Those closest to the couples often observe the pattern early on. What begins as charm, attentiveness, and adoration gradually shifts into emotional distance, subtle criticism, and withdrawal. The woman who once seemed the center of the universe notices small cracks: the late-night text from another admirer, the faint defensiveness when she expresses a need, the quiet retreat when intimacy becomes more than performance and requires true vulnerability. These moments, often invisible to fans and media, mark the turning point between fantasy and reality, between excitement and emotional labor. In every high-profile relationship, this pattern repeated. Serena Williams, Taraji P. Henson, Erykah Badu, each woman was swept into the whirlwind of early romance, only to experience the familiar drift when the thrill of novelty diminished. And yet, the public often overlooks the underlying struggle. Common is not failing to love, he is failing to endure the ordinary, unromantic work of sustaining it. The pattern is not malicious, it is deeply human, but it becomes magnified under the glare of fame. This repetition also highlights another critical factor, the allure of reinvention. Hollywood encourages public figures to appear perfect, to radiate growth, healing, and insight. Common's persona embodies that ideal, spiritual, introspective, emotionally evolved. Yet public growth cannot erase internal patterns. The very same man who meditates at sunrise, who crafts poetry about love and commitment, who speaks eloquently about emotional evolution, is still vulnerable to the familiar impulses of love addiction. The contrast is stark. Fans see the composed, reflective figure on social media, in interviews, on magazine covers. They witness a man who seems to have conquered the pitfalls of romance, who honors the women he dates publicly with warmth and devotion. But those who have been in the private spaces, the quiet moments behind the curtain, see a different reality, the early intensity, followed by withdrawal, the promises of love, followed by emotional retreat. And this dichotomy explains a great deal about the paradox of Common, why someone so capable of appearing deeply connected and present struggles to maintain real, lasting relationships. Understanding this pattern also requires acknowledging human complexity. Love addiction does not negate affection, desire, or even true emotional investment. It does, however, create a dependence on a specific emotional state, the intoxicating high of early romance, and a simultaneous avoidance of the ordinary work required to sustain love. The consequence is heartbreak, repeated loss, and a trail of relationships that start with fireworks but end in silence. As this chapter closes, it becomes clear that Common's story is not merely about fame, relationships, or celebrity gossip. It is about a human pattern repeated over time, magnified by the glare of the public eye, and misunderstood by those who only see the surface. It is a story of allure and withdrawal, of intensity and retreat, and of the thin line between admiration and heartbreak. In the next chapter, we will delve into the high-profile relationship with Jennifer Hudson, arguably the most scrutinized, most publicized, and most emotionally charged of all. This relationship offers a window into the collision of love addiction, trauma, public perception, and personal growth, and ultimately, the heartbreak that follows when private struggles meet public scrutiny. When Common and Jennifer Hudson first stepped into the public eye as a couple, the response was electric. Fans erupted with excitement, eager to witness a romance that seemed almost fated. On paper, they were a perfect match, two Grammy-winning artists, both deeply soulful, both commanding respect in their respective fields. Each had endured personal struggles, heartbreaks, and public scrutiny, and each carried a story of resilience and talent. To outsiders, they weren't just a couple, they were a narrative waiting to unfold, a union that promised authenticity, artistry, and emotional depth. Common, ever the eloquent romantic, embraced this narrative wholeheartedly. In interviews, he spoke of Jennifer not merely as a partner but as a source of inspiration, a muse who redefined love for him. He described their relationship with reverence, emphasizing the depth of their connection, the trust they had built, and the comfort of shared values. Social media feeds became a gallery of affection, hand-holding photographs, intimate captions, and moments of vulnerability captured for a public audience. Every gesture reinforced the fantasy. They were not just in love, they were evolving together, spiritually, emotionally, and creatively. Jennifer, meanwhile, appeared equally invested. Having survived a difficult, emotionally scarring past relationship with David Otunga, she approached this new chapter cautiously yet optimistically. Her history with David had left deep emotional scars. Allegations of controlling behavior, obsessive monitoring, and manipulation had forced her to set strict boundaries for her own peace and safety. She was wary, understandably so. But with Common, there was hope. With him, there seemed to be the potential for a fresh start, for love unburdened by past trauma, for a connection built on mutual respect, admiration, and artistic understanding. At first, everything appeared seamless. Public appearances radiated joy. Interviews reflected admiration. The couple exuded the chemistry of two people who genuinely seemed aligned in spirit and intention. But beneath the glittering surface, subtle shifts began to emerge. While the public narrative was one of harmony, behind closed doors, tension quietly crept in. The honeymoon phase, so intoxicating and familiar, eventually began to waver, not because of a lack of affection, but because the deeper, messier aspects of intimacy were unavoidable. Rumors began to swirl online. Casual sightings of Common with other women, seemingly benign but suggestive, sparked speculation. Jennifer, despite her composed public image, was reportedly caught off guard by these incidents. Friends and insiders hinted at private conflicts, moments when Common allegedly criticized Jennifer in ways that were uncharacteristic compared to the glowing praise he offered in interviews. These whispers were early indicators of a familiar pattern, the initial glow of romance giving way to emotional distance, subtle disconnection, and the first signs of retreat. Complicating the situation was Jennifer's own history. Her previous relationship with David Otunga had left her vigilant, cautious, and protective of her emotional boundaries. Every interaction was filtered through the lens of past trauma. She wasn't merely hesitant, she was strategic in safeguarding her peace and autonomy. This context is crucial to understanding her reactions during the unfolding drama with Common. Jennifer's hesitancy wasn't a reflection of a lack of love, it was a reflection of a commitment to self-preservation. The turning point, insiders suggest, arrived with discussions of marriage. Common, who had publicly expressed his desire for a deeper, more lasting connection, reportedly planned to propose. Jennifer, however, hesitated. The reasons were rooted in both personal history and instinctual caution. To the public, it might have appeared as a sudden rejection, but in reality, it was a carefully considered decision shaped by prior experiences and present concerns. For Common, accustomed to the rush of early romance and the adrenaline of pursuit, her hesitation may have triggered a retreat. The familiar pattern of love addiction, the flight when commitment feels overwhelming, seems to have quietly emerged once again. Adding fuel to the speculation were reports questioning Common's loyalty and fidelity. Whispers of infidelity, discussions of private critiques, and claims of emotional distancing began to circulate online. Some insiders suggested that Common's detachment intensified after Jennifer's refusal to immediately accept a proposal, highlighting a tension between desire for commitment and fear of the emotional labor required to sustain it. Yet even amid rumors and speculation, the couple's public persona remained intact, at least initially. Common continued to speak of Jennifer with affection and admiration, while Jennifer's composure suggested dignity and strength. Observers noted the contrast, one partner publicly amplifying devotion, the other privately negotiating boundaries. It was a delicate dance, one shaped by past trauma, habitual patterns, and the pressures of living love in the public eye. This chapter of their relationship illustrates a universal truth: no amount of public romance or charismatic persona can fully mask private struggles. The collision of love addiction, personal trauma, and celebrity scrutiny creates a complex landscape where vulnerability is both a gift and a risk. Common's desire for the honeymoon high collided with Jennifer's need for safety, trust, and gradual emotional investment. And as the cracks widened, the narrative that fans cherished, the perfect, soulful Hollywood romance, began to unravel behind the scenes. By the end of this part, it becomes clear that the Jennifer Hudson chapter is not just about two individuals. It is a story of human complexity, emotional patterns, and the challenge of sustaining intimacy when personal history, psychological predispositions, and public scrutiny intersect. Their relationship offers insight into the delicate balance between passion and commitment, excitement and stability, fantasy and reality.